There is not much time left.
Hola.
How's it going, friend? How's it going?
Not too bad, not too bad. How are you doing?
Not bad.
Good, good.
Folks, it's Thursday night. It's 9 p.m. here in the UK, and that means it's time for Jungle Drums. That time of the week when Jungle drums on about tech and gaming news. I've got my good friend and mod, Sergeant J, with me this evening.
Hola all.
How's it going? Right, so we were going to have a third this evening, but unfortunately he got roped into making dinner at the last minute. So, you know, it's our loss. It's our loss. What have you been up to, actually, this past week, Jay, aside from dumping horrible amounts of time into World of Warcraft?
I have no idea what you're on about. I would never ever do such a thing. No, not much really, to be fair. I had 4 days off in a row, so...
Cool. Fair enough.
Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I do apologise.
That's fine. You know, it's fine. You know, it's 9 o'clock, and you know you're doing other stuff. It's cool, man. I see how it is. You know, I'm not taking it personally at all.
Oh no, I told her. Don't worry. Anyway, back to what I was doing. I had 4 days off, and so I didn't really do much. I had to help out, set up a we have like a Mayfair down like near the green where I live. So I had to being part of the scouts, had to help set that up. And then sort of afterwards went down to Southsea for a little bit. And other than that, I've pretty much just been, as you clearly stated, not binging on WoW or anything like that.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. It's the weather up here has been it's absolutely amazing. About 18 degrees Celsius. So that's what, mid 60s for those of us that don't use metric. It's been really, really nice up here. Really, really nice. Well, good. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Skyacro. Sorry, I was distracted. Right, so we've got a few bits of news here. A decent, actually, combination here of quite a bit of tech stuff. We're going to kick off quite tech heavy, and then the second half is going to be mostly gaming stuff, so to speak. Hey, thanks for that follow, man. Much appreciate. Hope you stick around and enjoy the show. Jungle Drums only happens once a week. We do it every Thursday, you know, because usually I'm playing games and whatnot on my other stream days, but a Thursday night is when we just have this little bit of a chat about what's hot, what's not, and you know, just occasional, you know, sometimes we're fortunate we actually come across a news item that isn't, you know, in the limelight, so to speak. But I think most of this stuff tonight is fairly out there. So anyway, the first item of news is from a Tech Radar, and this is about the Windows 10s release date. Okay, now if you haven't heard of Windows 10s, then you know, don't worry about it. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of folk haven't heard about it. You may be familiar in the education world, you know, like colleges, high schools, universities. They have different licenses for Windows. You know, they've got like education versions, which are usually slimmed down. You know, they've got less features, and you know, because they're given out in bulk. You know, like an organization's given this education license, and they can, you know, they'll have like hundreds, if not thousands, of copies of the operating system. So what Windows 10s is pretty much aimed at the education sector, but at the same time, it's also aimed at something else. I don't have the statistics on me or accessible, but allegedly Chromebooks have been like, you know, hoarding a big part of the market share nowadays. If you've never used a Chromebook, you know, they're not really a laptop. They're like, you know, a baby laptop with the Chrome OS. So you can't like install normal programs and whatnot. You can only install apps that are on the Google Play Store. So this Windows 10s is Microsoft's version of that. It's a lightweight version of Windows 10 that basically, you know, has like the most basic of features in it, and you can't just install anything on it. You can only install apps through the Microsoft Store. It actually came out just a few days ago, May 2nd, and it's, again, it doesn't really apply to us. You can't go to the store and buy this. It's only available at the moment to schools, and it's free to all schools that currently have Windows 10 licenses. But if you fast forward a little bit, and this is kind of the long-term marketing scheme of Microsoft, is that they're going to release their own version of a Chromebook, and it's going to have this operating system on it. You know, because they know it's when you look at like the Microsoft Surface, have you seen how much those are, Jay?
No, I've not.
They are ridiculous. They're awesome. I mean, they're top spec, beautiful, you know, laptops, but they're also tablets. Really, really powerful. But I mean, you're talking hundreds upon hundreds in our money over here. You know, I'm sure I had a friend who bought, what was it, a Surface Pro 2 or a 3, and I'm sure it was the better part of like 800 quid or something. You know, they're more expensive than the iPads, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe. Whereas these new laptops that are going to be coming out, if we look at dollars, they're going from anywhere from $189 to $299. So that's what, 150, 240 quid in our money. And so they're, you know, if you think about it, I mean, you know yourself, you know, when you were in uni, did you really need a huge, bulky, full functioning laptop? You know, if you think about it, most students, what do you need? You need the ability to access programs like Microsoft Word, OneNote, Excel, the ability to get on the internet and stuff, do your research. So this operating system is perfect for that kind of user. So it is.
Yeah, well, it would be. I never used laptops in my uni days. But I barely use laptops. I'm not a big fan of them personally.
See, I couldn't. Well, I use my tablet. You know, my Windows 10 tablets. It functions just like a full-blown and it's just so handy. Everything we do is on OneNote, so it's perfect. Like, I can do assessments and stuff, and then my professors, you know, they can just remotely grade it via OneNote, give me feedback via OneNote. It's the digital age is awesome for school.
I just can't get on with the touchpads on laptops. I don't know what it is, but I hate laptop keyboards as well. I don't know if it's because of how compact they are compared to that of what a actual keyboard is or whatever. I just do not get on with them. I hate laptops. I want to get one at some point because they're useful, because they're mobile, they're easy to. But I just can't cope with them at all.
That's fair enough. I tell you, you should look in that tablet that I got. That doesn't break the bank, and
you know,
the remote play that, you know, because it comes with the dock.
Well, exactly.
See,
like that will not be good for me.
It has you see, you couldn't play WoW. It has Steam Link though. But yeah, so it's quite interesting. This Windows 10s, you know, like I said, you won't be able to buy it in stores, but it will come bundled with these new slim laptops that are specifically targeted to compete against Google's Chromebooks. Because if you look at the price of Chromebooks, it's the same. They're quite inexpensive compared to, you know, full-blown laptops. But they are, you know, there's less features. Obviously, I mean, I think Chromebooks, they're great for students. I think they're great for younger folk, you know, like that kind of young teenager who's not quite fully tech savvy yet. Because, I mean, let's be honest, if you give a child, you know, a computer with unlimited access, there's a good chance they're going to be downloading crap and it's going to get viruses and all that kind of stuff. Whereas these kind of more primitive systems like the Chromebook or this new Windows 10s, you know, it'll be less likely to get infected, I would imagine.
I'd say it's very good for sort of education level anyway, isn't it? Because there's a lot less, I want to use the word junk or stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
It will slow it down. As it said, just the load times itself in the article.
You're absolutely right.
Increased.
You know, I mean, having an SSD,
decreased.
I don't notice that, but I can imagine. I mean, what Jay's talking about is in the article actually says that for Windows 10 Pro, like on a conventional hard drive, it takes about 30 to 40 seconds for Windows 10 to fully start up.
I can confirm that mine takes quite a while to start up.
Does it? Okay.
I haven't got an SSD, so it can take, plus my hard drive's pretty full as well, it can take quite a while to load.
That's fair.
And there has been problems with Windows 10 that I won't delve into too much, but obviously like the black screen with the spinny circle that takes forever as well.
That's fair enough. Well, this Windows 10s, I mean, they're saying that on, compared to that 35 to 40 second. Hey, thanks for the follow, MLG Pro. Much appreciated, bro. They're talking a 5-second load up, you know, which, I mean, again, if you've got an SSD, you're used to that. But remember, this operating system is targeting the low-cost laptops, the students and whatnot. So that's, that's a big deal. Another thing about this Windows 10s is if you think about when Windows 10 first came out, there was a lot of people with older tech that were having issues. Even so, they maybe passed the compatibility checker, it ran like crap or it wasn't working. So this Windows 10s is again aimed for these kind of lower spec devices where it's gonna run better. It's not gonna take up as many resources. The only downside I can see of 10s is I would imagine you will be kind of forced to use the Edge browser, because I don't know if you can get Chrome through the Microsoft Store. I wouldn't think so. You know what I mean? You have to download those things separately, and on the Windows 10s operating system, you can't do that. It's just solely the things that are there. But it's, it just shows you Microsoft is really trying to ramp things up for students. They've got this whole, Minecraft programming thing they're starting to introduce now.
Literally, I was going to bring that up actually about that, because it says in the article, doesn't it, that they're shipping that with all the education units.
Yep.
I've never even heard of it, so just looked into it. It's quite interesting.
Well, because I remember, was it last year when I went to Insomnia up here in Scotland, and they had the big Minecraft section, and it was the BBC was there, and they were talking about the Minecraft education thing. Yeah. So it's been an initiative that's been around for quite some time. But yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, so that is Windows 10s. Again, something that you can't buy separately, but you'll probably in the near future start to see these kind of smaller or less costly Microsoft devices. I don't know what they'll call them, because obviously Google calls them Chromebooks, so who knows what Microsoft will come up with.
Softbooks. Calling it
now. Right, hey, our next bit of news is also from Tech Radar, and actually this ties in with, you weren't here last week.
No.
And I'm sure we talked about Kodi last week. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before.
This is a very interesting article, I think.
But basically, okay, whenever it was, a week or two ago, the European court, the flipping EU, had made a ruling about these fully loaded Kodi boxes, right? And they were saying that, look, they've now made it in Europe, it's illegal to sell Kodi boxes that are fully loaded, with software that enables people to stream things illegally and download things illegally, blah, 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 blah. So this article from Tech Radar is specifically about the UK now. Because remember, the EU can pass a thing. It doesn't mean that the individual countries have to actually follow suit. But anyway, this is quite an interesting bit of news from Tech Radar. And this is about how internet pirates could now face up to 10 years in prison. Basically, an act just went through Parliament, and it's called the Digital Economy Act. And this is basically the UK government saying, look, we're cracking down on pirates, right? We're cracking down on Kodi boxes. So under the new act, the prison sentence is now raised to 10 years. Before this act, it was 2. And let's be honest, I don't think there was really that many convictions of these types of infractions anyway. But it's just the latest move from lawmakers in this battle against Kodi boxes. Now, let's clarify this a little bit, right? Set-top boxes are legal, right? They are. Of course, they're fully legal. Open source Kodi software, as it comes standard, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a media center. But once you start introducing this other software to basically allow you to stream things illegally, I think Game of Thrones was probably the most popular thing on a Kodi box. Aside from
wouldn't surprise me.
You know what I mean? That was that's been the most pirated TV show for the last however many years. And this is where it's interesting: is this act, this bit of law, doesn't really affect you if you own one of those boxes, right? If you're in the UK, the law's funny. Streaming things illegally technically isn't illegal, if that makes sense. There's no actual laws about streaming. So this act doesn't affect people that already have one. This act is actually all about the people trying to sell them. Like, you know, if you go on, I think you can get them on Amazon, but I don't want to taint them with that brush if they don't. But, you know, if you're looking online, these places that sell these fully loaded Kodi boxes, this act now makes it illegal for them. So at least here in Britain, we're going to stop seeing those on the internet. And if you do see someone selling one, they're breaking the law. You know, the thing that's interesting, even so the headline here is about Kodi, what it actually affects is also all those people that download things illegally. See, whilst I said there's no technical laws about streaming, there is about downloading over here. So now what this act has done is actually increased the possible prison sentence for, you know, all those folk that are downloading, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 via torrent or whatever. You know, someone caught with that could get up to 10 years in prison for just, you know, having a film downloaded. It's pretty crazy. I mean, I say crazy. At the same time, it's good. You know, it's something that they've been trying to stamp out for years and years. I mean, I remember when I used to live in the States, you know, seeing headlines of, you know, like feds, storming a house somewhere, and it was, oh God, what was it? It was like, I'm sure it was like a 12-year-old that had been downloading like a bunch of movies or something, and, you know, they came to arrest this 12-year-old or something. But that was way, way, way back. You know, I don't think, you know, since I was out of the country for quite a while, Jay, I mean, what about over here? Do you have any idea how it's been over here?
I haven't really seen much, well, I say seen much, paid much attention to the news as I was younger. I never really did. It's more so now, especially with work and it being on. There always was a lot of stuff about them wanting to crack down on it, but it's something that is very hard to crack down on it, in all fairness.
Yeah, I think that's where we're limited, isn't it? The resources, you know, we don't have. When you look at the US, for example, the amount of agencies they have at their disposal, you know, your local city police, your sheriffs, your state troopers, then all the federal agencies, whereas over here, you know, we don't have all of those things.
I would like to say there's almost quite a lot of privacy intrusion, I'd say, potentially to even be able to sort of track this sort of stuff. I mean, you've got to be monitoring who's downloading what, and
it's funny you bring that up. I was having that discussion today in WhatsApp. I was telling my classmates about this bit of news, and we were talking about that, and we started talking about torrents. And I said, look, you know, I mean, I don't do that stuff. Whenever I lived in another country, when I lived over in Southeast Asia, yeah, it was fair game because of the way international copyright law works. It was absolutely fair game over there. But the thing is, nowadays, most of these torrent sites, there's quite a large majority of the new films and things that you see in torrents are actually plants. Yeah. Agencies have actually put these files there, and they've got trackers in them. You know, hence why anyone who's used torrents, I mean, like I said, it's been over a decade since I've touched them, but you always inspected the file for, you know, to see what was included. Because a lot of these folk, this is what they would do. They would put these little files in that would basically allow them to be able to do it. Because especially in the States, they would just, once they, you know, got the blip or whatever, oh look, yep, this person's downloaded it, they would subpoena that person's internet service provider to get their full name, their address, blah 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 blah, and then, you know, go over and, you know, knock the door, and there you go. Whereas over here,
with I think it was when Pirate Bay, wasn't it, or something that got taken down?
Yes, the
and
Pirate
that came
Bay
back up, and I saw a lot of hoo-ha about how that was apparently brought back up by FBI or whatever to try and catch people out and all that. I mean, I don't use torrents. I used to use old school LimeWire ages ago.
Oh God, I remember that. Yeah.
But I don't touch them anymore. I don't see the need for it anymore.
I mean, nowadays, you know, it was different when we were limited to how you could access things, but nowadays with all the things you can stream, like stuff like, look at Blinkbox, where it's not that long after a film's been in the cinema that you can just rent that film at home.
You've got all these services, haven't you, like Now TV, Netflix, all this sort of stuff. Like I'm quite happy to. I've just recently watched Star Trek Beyond, which was out God knows how long ago. probably about a year back. But it came out on Now TV, and I was like, I've been waiting to see this, so watched it on there. But I think from my perspective, I'm not a big sort of TV show person. I like them, but I just don't put the time into watching them.
Yeah, can
So
hear
for me,
that.
I've never got a real need to stream or anything like that. I'll just put a film on from Now TV, Netflix, wherever I've got lying around.
But yeah, so these I'm just reading a bit here about the retailers as well have
Yes.
fully accepted this law. Amazon and eBay have announced they were banning the sale of pre-configured devices on their marketplaces. So that's good. And the article also brings up a good point that, it's kind of a shame that Kodi is getting this reputation
Well, yeah, exactly.
as piracy software, because it isn't. Kodi itself isn't. It's just a home media center. It's all these people out there that have created this
exactly that.
evil stuff.
They use the Kodi to take the world.
Yeah, bit of a shame.
Yeah, it is really, considering what Kodi is.
Yeah. Right, okay, hey. The next bit of news is from another place that I like to frequent quite often. I don't know how you're supposed to actually pronounce it. I just always say WCCF Tech, but I guess it's Wqf Tech? Wqf Tech? Wqf Tech?
Something.
And this is about the highly anticipated AMD Vega. Right, this is the top of the line video card GPU that's coming from AMD. We've been waiting on this thing for ages. If you remember last year when was it last year, year before, when the RX 480 came out, that's a mid-range card. It was never supposed to be a top of the line GPU, but still it performed really well. I mean, it was way ahead of the previous AMD chips, but it still wasn't quite to the level of the NVIDIA stuff. I mean, a 480, depending on games and depending on application, is kind of on the same level as a 1060, right? From the NVIDIA, the GTX 1060. Now, just recently, well, in the last couple of weeks, AMD did a refresh. They came out with the RX 580, which essentially the same card, but it's been improved a little bit. It's got faster clock speeds, and it's the same price, right? It's the same price. It's not any more expensive. And it's interesting now because the 580 actually outperforms the 1060. So we've got a little bit kind of back and forth here. The Vega, these are just leaked specs, but it was basically because of a Linux graphics driver update that AMD had submitted, and it accidental. I don't know if it's accidental or not, but it had details in it about Vega. So this is what has kind of released all this stuff. And looking at some of the details on this thing, I mean, if you're into your specs, it's got 4 shader engines, 4 render backends, 256 texture units. If you've been watching the news on things like Scorpio, right, and they keep talking about this, teraflops, how many teraflops? To put this into perspective, the RX 480, which was actually quite good when it came to memory bandwidth, did 5.8 teraflops, right, a second or whatever. This Vega does 12.5, so more than double the amount of memory, computing power, bandwidth, so to speak. It's ridiculous. Even the memory interface, the 480 uses a 256-bit memory interface, whereas the RX Vega is going to be 2 gigabit.
You just look at all those comparisons, and they're just silly. Like,
Yeah.
You've got a 4096 stream processor to that, the Radeon RX 480's 2304. It just seems like a massive upgrade. I mean, I don't know what that will process in terms of percentile increase, but it seems like it'll be a much better card.
It seems like it. The thing that I worry about is pricing, because
Well, exactly, that's the thing. How much is a card like this going to cost?
when you look at NVIDIA's pricing model, it's a bit ouch. Considering the 1060, which now there is cards lower than it, but the 1060 was kind of like the lower end of the performance tier, and that was 250 quid for that thing. When you get into the 1070, what, better part of 400, a little over 400. The 1080, now you're looking at over 6. The 1080 Ti that just came, they're too expensive. But so this is what interests me about Vega. Based off of this, the demos that have been viewed show that the Vega, and again, whether or not this turns out to be the case or not, we don't know. But it showed that the Vega was outperforming the GTX 1080. Not the Ti, not the new one that came out, but the 1080, which, I mean, still, you know, if someone walked through the door and gave me a 1080 right now, I'd be super happy. I mean, it's a beast of a card. So the fact that this Vega is going to outperform that, the key is going to be the pricing. If it's significantly cheaper than a 1080, they're on a winner. If it's around the same price or even more, you know, I'm not so convinced. But when you consider that they're saying this card was running Star Wars Battlefront at 4K and delivering over 60 frames per second, yeah, that catches my attention. That's
I'm looking what I've found for potential prices, but it's very hard to gauge whether or not what they say on these sites is going to be gospel or true or whatever.
It's just complete scuttlebutt rumors at the minute, isn't it?
Well, exactly. I mean, they're saying here about the different levels of the AMD Vega GPU.
Yes.
Top card might not even get a 500 series. That could be their new AMD RX Fury, which will be aiming to go head to head with the GTX Titan or 1080 Ti. And apparently, as such, its price could be between $1,200 and $800, which is quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
But this is all sort of speculation kind of area rather than definite prices.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is the thing too. Vega is the name of the family, but you know, there'll be different iterations of it as well. There'll be the Vega 10, there'll be a Vega 10 Pro or a Vega 10X or some crap. So it'll be interesting. I mean, if we can get a Vega card that, okay, maybe not the top of the line one, but the kind of the mid-range, that if it's, I don't know, if it's 300 quid and it outperforms a 1070, that would be a bargain. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I think that's dreaming for too much, but
I think that's a little bit.
That would just be, you know, because, I mean, we say this, right? But, I mean, if I'm totally honest, how powerful of a video card you buy, it depends on your monitors, okay? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've got a GTX 1060 at the minute, and it's a great card. It runs everything I can throw at it. But that's because I use 1080 displays. You know, the card doesn't sweat at 1080. If I had 1440, that would put a bit of stress on it. And there's no way that card would handle 4K. There's a good chance at 1440 it would actually probably, you know, I wouldn't get a nice steady frame per second. You know, it would probably kind of dip a little bit. Whereas when you look at like a 1070 will give you straight up 1440 buttery smooth gameplay. 4K will make it sweat a little bit. Whereas when you get into 1080 and 1080 Ti territory, now you're talking about being able to play a game at 4K and play it comfortably and smooth. So that's the difference. You know, who cares if, oh look, CSGO is running at 350 frames per second, you know, it's not about that. That shouldn't be your reasoning for buying a card. In this day and age, you need to look at what are your displays. You know, if your displays are only 1080, you don't need anything more powerful than a 1060 or an RX 580. The thing that changes that though is VR, right? If you want a VR headset, then okay, you know, yeah, the 1060 will do it, but you're probably gonna be better off with a 1070 or higher, you know. So it's
and that VR does bump up your specs.
Yes, just just a bit, because I mean, it looks like VR is here to stay. You know, it's been a fad, off and on for ages. I mean, like I remember playing VR in shopping malls in 1991, and they looked awesome back then. You know, and here we are, 16, yeah, 26.
It was kind of really the sort of next step that could go on from everything. When you look at things like, just as an example, like films and everything, they went to 3D and you go, well, where can they go with next? And with gaming, VR sort of seemed like that next
The
sort of step forward, but it's
the thing that interests me, and it's something that actually the article doesn't go into here, Jay, but if you look near the end of it, it talks about how Vega 10 supports 8 independent work threads simultaneously. Now that's interesting, and here's the reason why I find that interesting. The new AMD CPUs that we've talked about several times on the show, the Ryzen, the top of the line Ryzen has how many processors? Has 8 cores, which, hyper-thread, so it's got 16 effective. But so it makes me wonder, is it going to be a case of through driver optimization, if you partner a Ryzen up with a Vega, if it'll give you just, even more ridiculous. This is pure speculation on my part. This is not based in fact. If it's going to, supercharge it, so to speak. Because in the past, that's what they did. They had the AMD Mantle drivers for things like Battlefield. And it was specifically, if you were using an AMD CPU and an AMD GPU, it was... it optimized like a certain level of the the OSI layer or whatever. I can't, and it was supposed to be better. So I wonder if Vega and Ryzen will just be a gamer's match made in heaven.
You look at, I almost want to say the timing of them both as well. It's kind of a bit uncanny, isn't it? Really, they could quite happily release each one at separate times.
Yeah.
So why at the same time? It could just be pure. They wanted to get these both out. It's a good sort of hit into the market, or it is, as you say, for that exact reason right then.
Yeah. I think it is a case of them. I know that both the Vega and the Ryzen have been delayed, like significantly, but I think it makes sense they come out with the CPU first because, if we're honest, AMD processors have been behind the power curve for a very long time. And they pulled out the Ryzen, and it kicks ass. I mean, I would love, my next PC, if I was to ever build one, which I don't need one, but, it's one of these kind of fantasies, right? If I was to build another computer, it would have a Ryzen CPU in it. When you look at, for 300 quid, you can get a chip that is the equivalent, or if not better than, the Intel £1,000 chip. It's a no-brainer. And then, if they can do the same thing with the Vega, if the Vega smashes the 1080... but it's significantly cheaper, I mean, holy shit, AMD once again becomes the bargain, warrior. Because that was always the pull of AMD, was it was cheaper. Yeah, you look, years ago, they weren't stable, they were finicky. It was like, it was a difference between having, like, let's say like a BMW M5 or something, right? That thing will run, as fast as hell, it's really, really quick, and it's maintenance free for the most part. The thing will just run itself, right? And that's fun, that's great, but guess what? It's bloody expensive. Whereas if you get your Ford, your Cosworth or something, right? Or, or any other thing, like let's just use an Astro or something, some cheap car, but you soup it up, you put a turbo on it and a nitrous kit, right? And you soup it all up, and it could be faster than that BMW M5. Yeah, you're going to have to tinker with it. And sometimes the thing's going to break down and blow up. But, it's part of the thrill. And that's what AMD always was. You could get high-performance parts for cheap. But, it wasn't just for your normal consumer. Because it was like having a custom car that required a lot of work and effort maintaining it. I mean, when you look at... Intel used to be... You just installed Windows and that was it. Was with AMD, you had to actually download motherboard drivers, and the order you installed everything was stupid. You got your motherboard driver, you had a Northbridge driver, you had a chipset driver, then you had the actual CPU driver. It was ridiculous on the old AMD boards. But once you got it all dialed in, it was pretty sweet. It was pretty sweet.
So involved like a modding or modders sort of.
Yes.
AMD almost with what you're saying. It'll be interesting to see if they've learned and they have it more sort of stable, which they probably will do. I haven't touched AMD at all. But if I do, I probably will build another PC at some point. It is tempting to look at the Ryzens and the Vegas.
See, I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, okay, what if you won a competition and they said, hey, look, we will build you, a PC of your spec, of your choice. What would you be leaning towards? Would you be leaning towards a new i7 processor, or would the Ryzen be kind of tempting you? Or
I think I'd have to properly have because I've looked into it, but not necessarily properly to see what would be better in terms of not just for gaming, but for other stuff as well. Especially if I wanted to use my PC for higher end things. Obviously, programming low end is not too bad, but if you go to sort of high end that sort of stuff, it can become quite intensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part of me would, because I've always been an Intel person, an Nvidia person. Part of me would be tempted to do the AMD just to see what it's like. That's why I say if I started building another PC again, AMD would be very tempting to do something different with. Try something different.
Because I'd even entertained the idea of, it'd be awesome to have like a separate, like a stream PC, a PC that just took care of all the encoding, this and this. And so for the Ryzen, which is AM4, I believe that's the name of the the flipping socket, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they've just released, I think BioStar was one of the companies that has released the super small form factor motherboards for it. So can you imagine having a PC that isn't that much bigger than your external hard drive with a Ryzen in there, right?
Just your little stream box.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
That would be super cool.
Sort of almost very cost effective to be able to do as well, as you said, with the prices and everything.
Yeah.
That would, to be fair, that would probably be quite a good idea for people. Make almost a little mini stream box, almost like a render farm, but not a render farm.
Yeah. Well, even think, you could make your own, instead of getting the Steam box, just make your own with a Ryzen, right? And have Steam Link and have that in your living room. Because again, we're talking, it would. You could have it. It would be about probably this big, man. About that big from front to back. Probably about that tall.
That's something you can easily have on. I mean, that's the size of probably a little bit smaller than a micro PC almost. That's just something you say you can have nicely on your desk or on a shelving unit or something, or on a tabletop surface, which would be quite neatly sort of tucked away.
Yep, it's either that or I could just wall mount it.
But exactly.
Just have. I'd love to. Have you seen those pictures of folk that do that? They get a piece of acrylic or perspex.
No.
And instead of having a PC in a case, it's all just mounted on the thing, right? And then, so what you can do is if you get acrylic or something, and then have LEDs behind it, just makes the whole thing kind of glow. Oh.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we digress. Right, next is another one from WCCF Tech, WCCF Tech, and this is concerning Prey. In fact, they launched the official trailer for Prey, because Prey comes out tomorrow. You can search on YouTube for that. I won't play the actual trailer itself. They did drop the demo this week that allows you to play through the first hour of Prey. I downloaded it. I tried it. It was decent. Now I know it doesn't sound like I'm that excited about it, and that's not true. The game, the best way for me to describe it is I remember when Half-Life first came out, the original Half-Life, and that game just was amazing, right? It sucks you in with the story. It was just, atmospheric, and holy shit, there was some kind of oh crap moments when things jump in front of you and stuff happens that you weren't expecting. And if I'm honest, Prey did that. Prey did that for me. It ticked that box. I was like, oh my, the story itself looks really cool. The thing that was the letdown for me was in this lead up to Prey, they kept talking about its graphics. They kept talking about how amazing it was going to look, blah, 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 blah. And see, I downloaded the demo on Xbox One, and if I'm honest, it didn't look all that great. It's a good looking game, don't get me wrong, but remember when I was playing through the Turing test? Remember when I'd got that game, Jay?
I remember when you said you got it. I don't think I ever watched you play it. I remember.
Well, that had amazing graphics, and I wouldn't say that Prey looked any better than that. I mean, yeah, in some ways it did, but a lot of the stuff in Prey, like the character models were beautiful, right? They were glorious. But then when you move to the wall, the textures on the wall weren't really that amazing.
Yeah.
I think on PC, it's going to be amazing. Like 4K, yeah, the game is going to be absolutely glorious. But I think it's unfortunate. I think it's a game that is actually held back by the PS4 and the Xbox One. You know, if they had waited to launch this, like, say, when Scorpio
Okay, yeah.
I think would be having a different conversation. It just... Again, this is my opinion. There might be folk out there go, what are you talking about? It looks amazing, it looks amazing. But I just honestly felt underwhelmed by the graphics. I'm not saying it's a bad-looking game, but it just wasn't what it was made out to be. Exactly. That being said, it was fantastic. I mean, it really has a really good story. I don't want to spoil it for anyone out there who hasn't played it yet, but sure enough, you go through and you're getting into the story like, oh, this is really cool, this is really cool, this is really cool. And then you have one of those moments where everything just changes and your mouth just drops. You go, what in the... And then the game really kind of starts. It's worth... Look, honestly, Jay, if you have space, download the demo just to give it a try. And then you can see what you think of the graphics as well, because maybe it's just me. Maybe I just had really unrealistic expectations. I mean, I don't know.
Having this is sound really weird. You coming back half, having read sort of what this is about, it almost gives off that sort of Half-Life vibe. With them being, obviously not. You can see about them being the experimenters and all this sort of stuff happening. It kind of almost does sort of remind me of now of. This is clearly just like Half-Life 3 renewed, right?
What? No.
Yeah, no, it seems like an almost sort of futuristic version of it.
Yeah, it's one of those games that, you know, it's one of these games that I would consider getting. But again, I'd buy it on PC. I wouldn't get it on console.
Yeah, I think it's but if it is the graphics are much better on PC, I think games like this, especially with the sort of, because it's I would say it's almost a horror game from what I almost look at potentially. I've not played the demo or survival sort of game, but I suppose on a PC with better graphics.
Think first person shooter, but RPG, because there's skill trees.
Yeah. There's
heavy story. It's, you know, you can tell it's a Bethesda game. You know, I mean, it's
I think you're probably right. I think on something like PC, the higher graphics might make it more, I want to say, immersive almost.
Yeah.
Give it that more ambient sort of feel to it. That more like holy shit, you know, sort of feel. Better lighting, all that sort of stuff might be a case in it as well. Which I expect a game like this would probably be benefiting from a lot more. Yeah,
no, agreed.
Having not played it, so I've downloaded a demo and I'll have to mention it next week or something after I've had a look at it, see what it's like.
Yeah, no, definitely give it a check out, bro. Right, okay, moving along. Our next bit of news is from The Verge, and The Verge is talking about something that's happened over in China. China has brought a new law. We're talking about quite a bit of legal stuff this evening. But this new law forces Dota, League of Legends, and other games, I think even stuff like Overwatch, right, to reveal odds of scoring good loot. Let's clarify this a bit. You know, we all know about loot in games, right, and how you can buy loot boxes and you have a chance of getting stuff out of them. But, you know, you never know how much of a chance you have. But see, in China, they regulate gambling extremely hard. I mean, it sounds funny because obviously there's so much illegal gambling that happens over there, but that's why there's so much illegal gambling, because gambling is regulated so fiercely.
They just regulate a lot of stuff out there,
well, to be fair, China, they regulate human rights, as in there is none. They regulate, there's a lot of things China does. But so anyway, what they've done is China has ruled that, you know what, these loot boxes in League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch, Counter-Strike, Hearthstone, right? All of these games. The purchase of these mystery boxes is a form of gambling. And as such, these companies must reveal the odds behind the prizes. Right? So that was the ruling. And amazingly, guess what? Sure enough, Dota 2 and League of Legends have both released the drop rates. It's it shows you how much both of those games rely on that market, I think. You know what I mean?
Well,
I know they play them worldwide. I know they're worldwide games, but the fact that China says, right, this is the way it is, and there was no thinking about it, there was no negotiation, there was no kind of, oh, well, they just immediately, League and Dota were like, okay, yeah, well, if that's what you want, yep, sure. And they immediately released the release for the Chinese version of the game, though, right?
Well, exactly.
Not the worldwide rate. So don't think that you can try to use a VPN and log into Chinese Dota, you know, if you can read Chinese and see what the loot tables, you know, the rates are. It's a different version, so it probably doesn't. It's not the same. But it's okay. You're the man that asked. You played League for quite a while, right? And you're into this type of game more so than me.
Yes.
So, you know, what does that mean? Is it a big a deal as it sounds?
From looking at things like League and Dota, and especially League, because that's what I played. I didn't play Dota 2. I played League of Legends. It was a big game for me, and I have sunk a lot of money into it. I won't deny that fact. I'm probably well in the 200s, 300s. I reckon I've probably sunk into that game, which is a lot of money. But that is where they get their revenue stream from, though, isn't it? It is from these purchases. It is from these. It's a free to play game. I said that in quotation marks. It's not free for me. But it is a free to play game, and they are relying on their revenue from those kind of purchases. I won't lie, at the moment I've had like loot crates, so you can get these loot crates from just playing games. They got in League a mastery system, so obviously each character has a mastery level, and depending on how well you do in the game, based around just your kills, your assists, your map placement, your warding, your objectives, your towers destroyed, your gold earned, all of this sort of culminates into this rank you get given at the end, where it goes from, I think it's, I can't remember, from that it might be like a C or a D to like an S plus, depending on how high you get. Depends if you get like a loot crate at the end of it, like an S plus. I think mainly you do. And to be fair, I had a loot crate drop when I first started playing, when this system was first in place, and I was like, oh, I'll go open it, and it's like, oh, you need a key, and I was like, I've got key shards, or I could just buy a key. Yeah, buy the key. But I think it is interesting to obviously see why they want this released, is because it is a form of gambling at the end of the day. It's the same with something like Destiny as well. You buy these things, you don't know what your percentage chances, and you're going to keep buying them until you get what you want. Obviously, again, something like these loot crates is something that you can progressively earn through the game. This isn't just something that's locked behind a paywall. So for those as well who are, just for those that don't even pay for it, it's quite nice to then be able to see what their chances are from just slowly earning it through playing. But I find this quite interesting that China's asked this, because I can understand that it's a gambling thing and it's the odds, but you look at a lot of gambling games, I mean like proper tabletop gambling games, things like casinos and stuff. Roulette has very, very easy to work out and play odds. You know, if you put something on one of the numbers, you've got a 1 in 36 chance, or whatever it is, however many numbers there are, I think it's 36. If you put it on black or red, you've got a 1 in 2 chance of winning. If you put it on the thirds, you've got 1 in 3, and that's all very easy to work out. But you look at things like poker and blackjack, and it's very hard to work out the odds on something like that. Yeah, you've got people that can count cards, who can obviously, but that's illegal. Well, I don't say illegal, but that's not allowed in casinos for the exact reason of it's pretty much putting the odds in your favour. So, although I can kind of see why they want this, it's almost, again, like saying where it's like, should you know what percentage of chance you've got for this, or should it be something that's a nice surprise if you suddenly you buy your first one and suddenly lucky enough to get a legendary skin or an epic skin or whatever out of it. But because it is China, I can understand why they've clearly asked for it, to say, for their regulations and everything. But again, as the article clearly suggested, have they altered the China stats so it's only on China servers, so it doesn't. So other people might not, other servers like the EU servers, EU West, all those lot have different drop rates, because there's a chance they could have done that. Sure, it's not that hard, but I think it's a bit mixed, really. But I think for a lot of players, especially me, I just looked at it out of pure curiosity. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, it could be completely wrong with stats, but I think it's quite nice for players to be able to see it, to be fair. I think it's something they maybe should have had anyway about needing this sort of legal farce and everything and all this.
Yeah, it's just
nice.
China being China, isn't it? I mean,
but at the end of the day, it's a revenue stream, and I think that's half the reason why these companies haven't done that. Haven't just because, like I said, League is a free to download game. I'm pretty sure Dota is a free to download game.
Yeah,
to be fair,
free,
I could progress through League, especially now with this new system, the box system, without spending a buck. And progress my way to level 30 as I did, but get my mastery, get my rooms brought for it, you know. But I think half the reason I spent the money on League was because I enjoyed the game, and it was sort of like a developers here's your money.
Yeah, way of support. That's the way I've always looked at purchases in free-to-play games. Is it's your way of showing appreciation, and getting stuff you want, but you know, you don't feel like, oh, I'm getting ripped off. You think, well, wait a minute, this game is free. It's given me this many hours, so okay, hey, if I spend a few quid to get a skin or something, you know, seems like a fair deal.
Exactly. Plus, again, with these sort of games, it's not you're paying to win thing. It's literally a cosmetic upgrade. That's it. It's I can make my character now look like this. It doesn't change anything at all. To be fair, I don't play League. I don't think any skins really impact you being able to get kills or something, because your abilities look so much different. They're not recognizable, or you think, oh, this character could be this character, and it turns out to be wrong. They're all very unique, and they're all very obvious as to who they're related to. This is always nice about it. Same with Heroes of the Storm. We haven't picked that up recently as well. Is everything's you got banners you can have, sprays, hero skins, announcers, and none of that affects the actual gameplay. None of that is, I can buy a boost to level 10 within Heroes of the Storm, so I'm higher level than anybody else, and all this sort of stuff is. I kind of like those systems where it's just cosmetical based stuff.
Speaking of paying for things, that brings us nicely to our final article of the evening, and this one is from GameSpot, and it's talking about Steam. Basically released a new a stats page, and this stats page, you know, shows all sorts of info. It shows things about, you know, requests, you know, support requests. I mean, it shows, you know, all sorts of things. And the thing that's really quite interesting that's came out of this article is there's a huge number of refund requests, right? Now, when we say huge number, we are talking about, okay, this article, when did this article go up? This article went up yesterday, right? And this is a direct quote, as of this writing, so this is yesterday, the last day, so the last 24 hours had seen over 48,000 refund requests, which were typically answered between 1 and 2 hours. Holy crap, what is actually going on, right? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out, Jay. When it comes to all these folk requesting refunds on Steam, what is it? Is it a case of erroneous purchases? You know, like, say, someone who doesn't have permission to buy something, buying it, then their parents finding out and saying, right, you know, calling up for a refund? Is it people buying something, it turns out crap, and they want their money back? Is it folk buying some, you know, or is it folk actually at it where they're buying something and they finish it and then they're trying to get a refund? I mean, or is it just a big flipping combination of all those things?
I think, just very quickly, just before that, I think it's quite an impressive time almost with the amount of requests they're having.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I think a small majority of it would be people buying stuff they weren't supposed to, and parents saying asking for refunds, because you don't have to, if I'm correct, you don't have to save the card details on Steam, or you can delete them after.
No,
so,
yeah, you don't have to.
So that I reckon that'd be a small majority. I reckon, again, The ones that people buying the games, rushing through them and handing them back, I reckon that'd be a bigger shift. But I personally would look at it being more of the, oh look, here's a £5 bundle with all these cool games in, yeah, let's buy this. And then people going, actually I don't enjoy any of these games. This was kind of a spur at the moment purchase, potentially. I could be wrong, but that's the way I would look at it, because a lot of games I've brought on Steam, the ones I've wanted, I've brought, and I've had a look through and gone, oh yeah, these look pretty good, or read reviews, or looked it up. But I've brought a lot of bundles, like for example, I brought the whole entire Tomb Raider bundle because it was at the time the same price for the new Tomb Raider game, with the new Tomb Raider game, and every Tomb Raider game with it left for less price. And I was like, oh, that's a good deal. Boom, buy. But people might do that, you know, and then go, actually, do I want half the games in this bundle? So they might get a refund from the bundle. I don't think you can refund the games individually from a bundle, because that'd be pretty stupid if you could. But then saying that, all the games in that bundle are usually reduced anyway. But I reckon quite a big lot of it, a big chunk of it would potentially be that. I could be wrong, but that's what I would think personally. I think a big chunk of it would be people buying these big deals and then realizing that a lot of the games in them, like you can go buy the big, like for example, like a big THQ bundle, and then realize things like, I think it was THQ did, like Titan Quest and stuff like that weren't that great or whatever. And games like that, and they go, do I really want this bundle? Especially if you buy like the big £300 bundle when they're down to £100. That is quite a lot of money. And if you find 75% of those games actually aren't games you are going to play or enjoy, you're like, was that a worthwhile buy?
I also wonder how much of it is, I mean, again, if you go back in time when, you know, we bought our PC games in physical form, right? You actually bought a retail box, and you know, it was relatively easy to sell them on, you know, or maybe even a game store trade them in. In the console world, that was definitely the case, right? If you had a game, you know, look at some of the big chains, that they would actually, you know, you could trade in new releases and get a lot back, so on and so forth. And I wonder, and you know, maybe it has nothing to do with it, but it makes me wonder if, is it possibly because there's a lot of like new PC gamers who kind of grew up on that console generation, and they're used to, when they're done with a game, being able to trade it in or get money back, whereas now they're on PC, they've bought something digitally, and once they're done with it, their only option is, well, to delete it. You know, I wonder if that could maybe be, you know,
it could be
a
as
factor.
Well.
Saying, oh, you know what, screw this, I'm going to try to get my money back.
I suppose though the thing is, especially if console games, it's very hard to get a refund on consoles, and most like game now have obviously year of seals, don't they, on actual physical copies? Because I used to do that. I mean, I got a good example of this is a long time ago. I brought, before they had all this seal, you had a week refund period where you can get your full price back for it. So for example, I brought Rayman Raven Rapids at the time on GameCube. I literally rinsed the game in a week and took it back and got my full money's back, and I was like, sweet, pretty much free game on my time.
Well, because Jay, that's the thing though, isn't it? Because here in the UK, and we've got quite good consumer protection laws, like when it comes to, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? You know, those, that kind of the policies where you can, as long as you have your proof of purchase with a lot of items, you can return them within however many days or something. I wonder if maybe that complicates the situation too.
It could,
because I don't think in the States, I don't think it's, if I remember correctly, it wasn't that easy, you know. But it depended on the store. Like I remember, like Walmart, prime example. We had a friend of ours, and her vacuum cleaner, her Hoover, had broken, right? And she brought it into Walmart. The thing was 10 years old, and she hadn't even bought it from Walmart, and she was able to get it exchanged. Right. But then on the flip side, you know, you look at you might go to another store and in the original box, and they're like, oh no, we're not taking that. So, but for some reason, I think here in Britain, I think we've got the laws that kind of help us out even more.
Mentioning a certain shop, not going to say a name that I work at. It's ridiculous, some of the return policies. Like I had a story once, from this is completely true, where somebody brought decking, had it for 10 years, it didn't weather well, and they brought it back and got a full refund. And you're like, really? Or like people eating half of an item and bringing it back, going, oh, yeah, it's more than what I thought, get a full refund. And I think some people also play on that, as you say. So it could potentially be a bigger split than what I said, of people buying these games, rushing through them and going, Get some money for it now.
I mean, this is the thing. When you look at, again, a physical game is one thing, right? Because you get a refund for it, they get that product back. Whereas, I mean, with a digital game, it's weird, isn't it? Because what can they do, right? Okay, they revoke the key, they make the key useless. Does it actually cost them anything to revoke that key? What, do they have to pay someone another 40, 50 quid to make a new key? You know what I mean? It's like, it's different when you talk about manufacturing costs of a CD or a DVD and the game booklet and the jewel case and then the box that it came in and then, you know, the shrink wrap that was over it, and then of course the price it was to ship that to the store. But nowadays in this digital world, I mean, how much does it cost for me to hit download in Steam? You know, I mean, this is another thing. It blows my mind sometimes when you look on Xbox. Why are digital games, and I know we've talked about this before, but digital games are more expensive than going down to the store and buying them physically.
Well, if you look as well at Xbox, most of the time you purchase something digitally, they blank outright say there is no refund available.
Yeah.
Which almost does say that it's not possible for that to happen. I mean, partly one with Steam, if they have it as almost, this game has a game key. Because if you look from, you can buy Steam games quite cheap from other places when you get the Steam keys for it.
Yes.
Do you think that, I don't know if Steam does something like this or not, I could be wrong, this is just all speculation, but do you think like they have the Steam key attached to the account, and if that account gets a refund, they can then just pull that Steam key out of that account?
See, I don't know. I don't know how it works. I don't know if they can just pull the key and then resell it, or if they just make the key null and void. I don't know. Don't know how it works.
I don't even really know how that all works. Do they, when it comes to getting games like that, do they purchase the game digitally for Steam to sell, or do they purchase, you say, a game key, which is then used? Because I've never really looked into that side of things.
Yeah, because I mean, anytime you purchase something on Steam, I mean, like if you've ever used Humble Bundle, for example, right, or which I recommend, right, any game you're thinking about purchasing on Steam, go to the Humble Bundle website. People think the Humble Bundle is just the Humble Bundle, but it's not. They've actually got a store, and you can buy games just directly there, right? Most of the time the same price, but actually a lot of the time they're cheaper. They'll have offers. But then also, if you're buying from the Humble Bundle store, a percentage of your purchase is going to the charity of your choice, right? So that's something to look into. So, but when you buy something from them, they just give you the Steam key.
Exactly.
And then you go to Steam, put in the key, and so I'm sure it's the same when you buy something on Steam itself. It's just associating that key with your account.
Can they then pull that key out, and then could they maybe even, now they've had that refund, do they sell that key on again, as you say, as a new thing, or do they put it into things like Humble Bundles or stuff like that? I don't really know the Humble Bundles or things, because you see a lot of people selling Steam keys cheap, and you sort of think, well, how have you got that? Have you bought it when it's been on sale, and then selling it for more? Or I've never really looked into that.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of grey market out there. I won't name the websites, but there is some ones that they've been under a lot of fire lately, where they're saying, they're dodgy. And then, of course, the website saying, well, look, it's not our fault. We're just a broker. You know, we don't source the keys. You know, like, for example, you know... Hey, he said it, not me.
Good job. Good job.
Well done. But yeah, I mean, you know, things like, you look at the software I use, right, XSplit. And a 3-month license is it 15 quid? I think it's 15. I can't remember if it's 15 or if it's 25. But anyway, that's for 3 months, right? And a website that was just mentioned not long ago, you could buy a year license for $5. How is that? Sure. How?
Where did I get that from?
Exactly.
You always look at those guys, and I've never understood how they can manage to sell them so cheap, how they manage to get these films. I'm always very iffy with ever. I've never really sort of purchased stuff made those sort of sites. I'm always sort of like,
Hey, well look, that is 5 after 10. So we went a little bit over, but this is what happens. See, when we're talking shit, you know, It's just a shame we didn't have beers, you know, like we're able to talk shit when we're down in London.
Well, exactly.
Which, remember, you still need to think about coming up here, but we'll talk about that later.
I do.
Jay, as always, you're a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Pleasure, as always.
And we will see you again next week. Remember, guys, it's 9 p.m. UK time here on Beam on the channel. If you're watching this later on demand, hey, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit that like button if you like, dislike if you don't, and please share as much as you can. It's much appreciated. And if you haven't subbed to my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? It's free, right? Just do it. And in that way, you'll get notified when I put up something new. Anyway, guys and gals, Acute Jungle, Sergeant J, signing off. Thank you so much, and
thank you.
Take it easy.
Sub and like, don't forget.